Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Good evening. This is Ishan Isaac with Zishan on air. A lot of key information with regards to everything is a false flag. That was a very interesting uh, article and information that was shared by The Wired. And the key information that was coming out with this article basically was that how in the past several years, and especially since 2015 and 2016 and onward, almost everything and with news development and what is being covered in the mainstream media, even on social media, is now labeled as a false flag. And a false flag operations, what are those? They are carried out by governments or militaries in an effort to blame an adversary for something they did not actually do. It has a rich history, and this is where it has some background context to it as well. For example, this German example where German soldiers pretended that the Polish troops had stormed across the Poland-Germany border in 1939 and taken over a German radio station. Very relevant to this program as well, because I'm on traditional media radio station as well as on social media with hundreds and thousands of followers. So thank you those who have tuned in and following me live and share this information. So if you have not subscribed my YouTube channel, please do. So that's in 1939 where this whole idea and information, misinformation or false information was shared. The German radio station was taken over. The next day, Germany invaded Poland, and Adolf Hitler referenced the previous day's fake attack in order to legitimize the incursion. Unfortunately, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but unfortunately, in the past several decades, and especially since 2015 and 2016, this has taken a lot of I would say ground, or where the rubber meets the road, or where some people have really accepted those false flag operations as everything that is now covered in the news. So how do you sort it out? How do you filter the right information with the wrong information? That's where you have to connect the dots and check the sources, check the credible sources, and at the same time use our brains, which obviously we're not using it, but that's just my personal opinion. But some people who are paying attention, they are using it. So almost every news development is now labeled a false flag and or a distraction designed to deflect attention from the real story, and by some conspiracy theorists online. And there is definitely a field day for them when such type of conspiracy theorists they come across with some information or even some factual news, and then it fits their worldview and how they run with it. And a lot of people who basically subscribe to that kind of worldview or their own perception or maybe their alternate reality or their own reality, they consider it as real news, although it could be completely false or nothing even closer to the truth. So all these floods popping up around the country is a false flag. That's another thing, unfortunately. And people, real people, they have lost their lives. But to many, and especially to conspiracy theorists, it's actually a false flag operation. An anonymous X account which posts far-right content wrote on July 10th, quote, "They want us to forget Epstein," unquote. And that's with an exclamation mark. So this is where this whole diversion from Trump is spiking the Epstein files. That's where Stu Peters, a podcaster with a long history of promoting anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories, wrote on X alongside a video of actual flooding in North Carolina. And a lot of people, they are paying attention to it. And then another person wrote, quote, "I didn't need Chat GPT to tell me it was a false flag assassination," unquote. R.C. De Winter, an artist with 70,000 followers on X, wrote on the anniversary of the Trump assassination attempt. So this was quoted, and these individuals were quoted in the Wired news article. And this is where data from ISD shows that over the past 5 years, false flag claims have increased by more than 1,100% on X, former Twitter. And the situation is getting increasingly worse. There were 1 million mentions of, quote, false flag, unquote, on X between April 26 and June 26, 2025, a nearly 350% increase compared to the prior 2 months. So go figure. Now, why am I discussing this? Because you will find out more in a few minutes. Anti-Semitic posts were among the main drivers of the most recent spike in the false flag conspiracies on X. And then this began, she says, in response to the shooting of 2 Israeli embassy staffers who were leaving an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. on May 21st. Less than 2 weeks later, a man in Boulder, Colorado, allegedly used incendiary devices to attack participants in a march held to support Israeli hostages in Gaza. Then this another conspiracy-focused X account, quote, false flag 100%, basically was focused on X account, posted 2 days after the DC shooting. The post was accompanied by a video of the immediate aftermath of the shooting and has been viewed 3.6 million times to date. So you can imagine how some out of curiosity and some people who actually believe in conspiracies and these conspiracy theorists are out there. And then in the aftermath of the Boulder attack, an X account that describes its author as an, quote, anti-Zionist Jew posted an image of the suspected attacker with a caption, quote, this man is an Israeli agent who has just perpetrated a false flag event in Boulder, Colorado, unquote. The post has been viewed over 2.2 million times. So these conspiracy theories is closely tied to the political climate. That's one person, Pradeep Krishnan, an expert in conspiracy theory and communication at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. He tells Wired, quote, the Trump presidency has mainstreamed conspiracist rhetoric to mobilize political distrust and promote anti-establishment sentiment, unquote. And he obviously is a conspiracy theorist and communication expert at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. So he's speaking very openly and clearly. So I quote him. And then other assassinations, for example, of John F. Kennedy, September 11th attacks, and the Sandy Hook school shooting are framed by conspiracy theorists as false flags. Today, after any major incident, whether it is attempted assassination of Trump last year, the devastating Texas flooding this month, obviously it was past month, or the shooting of a Minnesota lawmaker, Melissa Hartman, and her husband, Mark Hartman, in June, people on the right and left now regularly respond by claiming they are simply distractions. And this is where, quote, this is a false flag, psyop that the news media is using to instill fear into the people, unquote. Now, I get it. I completely understand where these conspiracy theorists are coming from, and especially when people are paranoid or there's a climate of paranoia and fear mongering. Although the only like GFK and many other leaders have said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. However, fear also sells, because imagine if there is, I would say, unfortunately, when we had Hurricane Beryl and then Hurricane Ike, and even Harvey, during Hurricane Harvey, you can see all these shelves are emptied in all these different retail stores, because one is definitely people want to secure themselves and want to ration some of these items, but some of it is completely out of fear that, oh, is going to be an Armageddon. So that's where these kind of conspiracies, they continue to shape up individuals' worldview. And Epstein files, that's why it's so important for the administration, and it happens to be Trump administration as we speak, but Biden administration should have done that too. They chose not to do it for whatever reason, and you can go and read all about it. And then there's a lot of pressure on this current administration in terms of releasing it. So next week we will see more. And now, what is the, I would say, consequence of that? Johnson cuts short House business to avoid vote on releasing Epstein files, because this bill, the big beautiful bill, is now tied to it, and MAGA base and a lot of House representatives, even GOP lawmakers, along with Democratic lawmakers, they have created this coalition, and they are definitely pressuring the administration, and this is where the House is paralyzed, where GOP lawmakers are trying to avoid another politically perilous vote on the issue that is confounding President Trump and roiling the MAGA base. We are done being lectured on transparency, quote unquote. That's Mr. Johnson. As you can imagine the frustration in this tone and in this statement, quote, we are done being lectured on transparency, unquote. And that's what the House Speaker is saying. And then Mr. Johnson said at a news conference where the typically unflappable speaker appeared frustrated. And this is now being reported by the New York Times. And you can see with the body language and the tone and the content and the statement and the choice of words that he has used here in this statement, where you can see the pressure on the speaker. He insisted that Republicans, quote, have been intellectually consistent the entire time, unquote, and added that, quote, we are not going to play political games with this, unquote. So as you can imagine, what's happening behind closed doors and then in front of the public, and in terms of how politics are continuing to be shaped up by the E word that I mentioned a few weeks ago, Epstein files. Inside the House, GOP Politico has reported this rebellion over Epstein. Rules Committee Chair Virginia Foxx of Virginia and panel member Aaron Houchin. So Aaron Houchin of Indiana informed House leaders that Republicans on the panel would not advance any rule for the week, the prerequisite for the chamber to fully function without a better solution to the Epstein problem, according to two people with direct knowledge of the conversation. So this is how the government works, the Rules Committee, and then the Louisiana Republican key allies. They are actually in full rebellion over the spiraling Jeffrey Epstein situation. NBC reported that House cancels last day of votes before summer break, and Epstein consumes Capitol Hill. And then again, some have been quoted as, quote, it's interesting to me that he chose the election of President Trump to bring this, to team up with the Democrats and bring this discharge petition. I try to follow Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, never speak evil of another Republican, unquote. That's the Speaker Johnson said, and I further quote him, quote, my gosh, it's hard to do sometimes around here. Well, you are in this public service, and public service is hard, Mr. Speaker, but you can imagine his frustration. In further information and news by New York Post, the former president acknowledged in his 2024 book, Citizen, My Life After the White House, that's the name of the book, that he flew aboard Epstein's private plane, nicknamed the Lolita Express, in connection to his work with his Clinton Global Initiative nonprofit. Quote, I wish I never met him, unquote. And it's obviously a very famous or infamous quote. I never had sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. No one can forget that, whoever was alive or not alive at that time, or still has access to social media, because that has become part of history. So that's Mr. Clinton, former President Clinton wrote of Epstein, adding that traveling on his plane was, quote, not worth the years of questioning afterward, unquote. The former president, who has not been accused of any wrongdoing in the Epstein case, claimed that he had no idea Epstein and Maxwell were sex trafficking minors. That's President Clinton for you. According to visitor logs, Epstein visited the White House at least 17 times, beginning shortly after Clinton was sworn into office in 1993. Remember, Epstein is not just sex trafficking humans or women or girls. We're talking about minors, child. So that's basically why the Republicans and the MAGA base and the right wing of this party, the Republican Party, and even with Democrats, they're seeing that rebellion in House, as quoted by these New York Times and NBC Politico and what have you, as I've quoted. France, in world news, France 24, which is the news outlet in France, French President Macron says France will recognize Palestine as a state. So that was a big announcement, and Israel and US are fuming about this, as reported in other news outlets. And then momentum has been building against Israel in recent days. And then the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Italy will hold an emergency call on Friday to talk about the deteriorating conditions in Gaza. And this is where this whole news is now coming, that Macron said he would make the official announcement at the UN in September, coming up in about a month. Starmer, the PM of UK, signaled the same British support. Quote, "We are clear that statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people. A ceasefire will put us on a path to the recognition of a Palestinian state and a two-state solution which guarantees peace and security for Palestinians and Israelis," unquote, Starmer said. So you can read up more about this. ABC News has quoted, and ABC News has also quoted, "A mass starvation looms in Gaza, European leaders to hold emergency meeting." And here is the fact and some numbers, and numbers are always staring at us like a naked truth, I would say, for lack of a better term. Second quarter average approval ratings of elected presidents. So this is the polls from 1961. First term, JFK was 76% of, obviously he was not been given the opportunity to serve second term. He was assassinated. Dwight Eisenhower, 1953, 72%. So you can see George H.W. Bush, 64%. Jimmy Carter, 1977, 64%. Barack Obama, first term, around the same time, 2009, 62%, 2013, 48%. Richard Nixon in 1969, 62%. And then in 73, 44%. Ronald Reagan, first term, 1981, 61%. In 1981, 61%. In 1985, 59%. George W. Bush Sr., George W. Bush Jr., 2001, 56%. 2005, 47%. And these were the Afghanistan-Iraq war. And that was his approval ratings, average approval ratings. Bill Clinton, 1993, he was, it's not very clear, I think minus 4%, so maybe 49, 50%, 1997, 56%. Donald Trump, 2017, is about 50% or so, because they're capping it at Joe Biden's 53%, so minus 4 for Bill Clinton and minus 3. So 53 minus 3, so Donald Trump at 50% in 2017. And in 2025, he's being reported at 40%. And Gallup poll, that's very accurate. Independents drive Trump's approval to 37%, second term low. And president's job approval ratings on issue by party. Foreign affairs, 93% Republicans, independent 33, Democrats 3%. Immigration, Republicans give him 88% job approval rating. Independents 30% and Democrats 4%. Foreign trade, 85% Republicans, independents 27%, Democrats 4%. The situation with Iran, Republicans give him 84%, independents 36%, Democrats 8%. The economy, Republicans give him 84%, independents 29%, and Democrats 2%. Middle East situation between Israelis and Palestinians, 81% Republicans, independents 27%, Democrats 4%. The federal budget, 81%, independents 19%, Democrats 3%. The situation in Ukraine, Republicans give President Trump 70%, independents 24%, and Democrats 12%. So this was get the data from Gallup. You can see it as well, and you can download it. July 7th to 21st in 2025. These are the numbers. 6 months into his second term, President Donald Trump's job approval rating has dipped to 37%, the lowest of his term, as just slightly higher than all-time worst rating, 34% at the end of his first term. So this is where jobs approval rating is lowest of second term, and you can see some more figures. Trump administration releases billions it withheld from schools, and a lot of superintendents and a group of 24 states and District of Columbia sued the Trump administration over the freeze last week, arguing that it violated the Constitution and federal law, in part because of money that had been appropriated by Congress. And then with regards to this, 85% of the superintendents said they have contracts that are supposed to be paid with the funds in question. Half said they would have to lay off staff and teachers without the money, including those who work with with the English language learners and special education students, according to AASA, which collected response from more than 600 superintendents in 43 states. So this is important because our kids and your kids and everyone's kids go to schools, and those have been released now. Immigrants face deportation surge as legal sources dwindle, and this is where Trump administration is still showing a lot of, I would say, extreme measures with regards to how this alligator Alcatraz in Florida has been built, and now planes are deporting these people, and they are departing as well. By the numbers, roughly 49% of people facing deportation nationwide have no attorney to advise them of their rights, according to the June data from Vera Institute for Justice. In the top 3 states with the most immigration cases pending, Florida, California, and Texas, representations rates vary widely. In Florida and Texas, 25.1% and 24.5% of all pending cases that are likely to have legal representations, whereas in California, there is 63.9% chance of retaining an attorney, according to nationwide released data by Syracuse University in June. So this is where immigration will continue to be a very key issue for this administration, and President Donald Trump is fulfilling those promises, and in some cases pushing the envelope in terms of even going after those who may not have violent crimes committed. And insight, there's some insight from Reuters. The family self-deported to Mexico and lost everything. As you can see some pictures. So there are people, they're self-deporting themselves as well. And some families are moving, especially those who are married to a citizen, even they have children who are born here. And then now they'll be studying in some other country with not the kind of education that we have and those standards. But unfortunately, this is what we are seeing and observing. So some families, they are moving to other places in the hopes of that hopefully this thing will calm down and they can or actually ride this storm. And Project Homecoming, this is despite high-profile deportations to Guantanamo, or El Salvador, the total number of deportations under Trump trails former President Joe Biden's last year in office. But there have been some numbers reported that it's basically they are ramping up those efforts. So with that, I'm going to sign off with the social media, continue with the traditional media. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do share and subscribe. I report, you decide, and stay hopeful. And even those who may not want to be hopeful, I would highly regard you as smart people, and every person has self-dignity and self-respect. So with my humble advice, if you can take it, I hope you would, that be cautiously optimistic, but at the same time, public opinion matters, and talk to your representatives at the local level, state level, and at the federal level. With that, signing off, and we'll connect next Sunday at the same time with social media and with traditional media. This is Zishan Isaac signing off. Thank you so much for joining me today.